Welcome to Saddle Up Live, a transformative podcast tailored for women aged 40 and beyond, where courage, God's grace, and a touch of sass are the driving forces behind conquering life's challenges. Join me, Lesa, as I take you on a captivating ride through the multifaceted aspects of womanhood in this vibrant stage of life, covering everything from my journey through breast cancer, the intricacies of marriage, and the joys of motherhood, to the exciting adventures of grandparenting. Together, we will uncover actionable strategies for personal and professional development, providing you with the tools and inspiration needed to blaze new trails and seize every opportunity that comes your way, no matter what your age or stage. Welcome, listeners. I'm very excited to have you here today. I have the beautiful Victoria Kirilloff with me, and I have to let you know, I don't care if you're getting divorced or not. You need to go to Doing Divorce Different and listen to the podcast that we just did, because it was so enlightening, and Victoria shared her truly authentic, heartfelt story to help women, and I'm touched and honored that she spoke about it. And I think it's going to save lives. And I'm not kidding, Victoria. So thank you for that. And it was completely unexpected. So I love that. And I love this woman sitting here in front of me. And the reason that I wanted Victoria on Saddle Up Live is because I see her as such a strong woman, and she's so good with finances. She's a financial expert. We'll have all her information in the show notes. And like I said, you can listen to Doing Divorce Different. She helps people through life transitions. And I feel like getting older is just a life transition. I want to be more financially savvy. And I feel like a lot of women, I have a lot of friends who they don't even know what's going on with the finances. Well, ladies, why not? I have shied away from it. And suddenly I'm starting to get my toe wet, and I want to look at it. I want to understand it better. And my husband wants me to. He wants me to help him and support him. So, Victoria, I feel like I remember, I loved you. I was so drawn to you. You have this horse story. We both love horses. And you had a cute story that made me fall in love with your dad and how we raised you. Can you share that? Because I think it's telling, and I think it's probably why you're so good with finances and not afraid of them. And that doesn't mean that, an old grandma dog can't learn something from it. So can you share that story?
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I am standing on the shoulders of a giant, and my father, man, he was ahead of his time, and he knew that, well, to begin with, he was a Russian nuclear engineer that worked for the CIA during the Cold War.
Wow. I don't know if I knew that either.
Seriously, out of a John Carr novel. He was just the most amazing man. And he had moved to the private sector by the time I was born and developed a type of train brake. And so he met my mom in Nebraska as he was selling to the Union Pacific. And he had me later in life. He was about 50 years old. And my mom and I essentially, I had the wonderful experience of being raised at his knee. And my dad's goal was for me to really take over the family's engineering and manufacturing business. But I was the only girl and I was the only child. And so he was very invested in me becoming a numerical communicator. And so I was in his board meetings and I was watching him, how he would negotiate with his clients and deal with the obstinate but brilliant engineers and the bottom line driven executives. And they all had very domineering personalities. But the way Papa would make deals and come together was by focusing on the financial facts. And he would always say, Victoria, if it cannot be expressed in numbers, it cannot be expressed at all. Gosh, it used to drive me nuts.
Yeah.
But now I say it all the time.
Yes.
And so, this was just in our household, everything was related to some type of like mathematical operation. So, as a kid, I was horse crazy. I mean, I still am. But I had, right around the time I was 8 years old, I had worn my parents down and I had been begging for a horse. And my father said, "Okay, kid, if you want a horse, I would like you to conduct a life cycle cost analysis."
That's so crazy.
And for you guys out there who don't have horses, the horse is just the cheapest part of the whole thing. I mean, they're not like a motorcycle that you can turn off. They continue to eat, and
Mhm.
the vets are going to come out, and there's going to be a very hefty vet bill. So you have to be aware of just how much a horse is going to cost. Otherwise, you can end up in a negative financial situation. So my dad said, "Do the cost analysis," and I said, "Okay, that's not a no." So my mom took me around to the barns and I scribbled down all of the information. And as I went back, and my dad was helping me a little bit with the report, I realized that the horse was going to take all of my time. So I asked my father to help me calculate how much money we were spending on all of my activities. And my mom had me in like tap, piano, voice lessons, acting lessons. I had lacrosse. I mean, it was nuts. I was a very organized kid. And I realized with the horse, we weren't going to have time for that anymore. So it would make sense if we reallocated those funds to the pony instead. And yeah, it was still going to cost some money, a lot of money, but it was doable. And so I made this numerical argument and I realized based off of how I saw my dad operate in that space, the more that I leaned on the actual realities and the constraints and not, "Papa, I want a pony, please buy it for me," he actually moved off his position. And not too long after that, Buster became a part of our family.
Aw.
uh, but it solidified in my mind like how I could use numbers to get what I want. And so that then formed the foundation of my divorce business. It's how I extracted myself out of a very abusive situation with my ex, who I call Voldemort. But, you know, as you were talking about earlier, Lisa, a lot of women have been held outside of the financial operations. Either it's how their family set up or it's just kind of how the cards lay. And my parents had a very traditional marriage where my dad worked and my mom, up until I was 10, stayed at home with me. And my dad realized that, you know, my role as being head of household, essentially, when he was gone, was to be the financial communicator between my parents and their advisor, my mom and their advisor. So not only did my dad have me in board meetings, I was also being inundated with information and how to manage the family assets after he passed away. So this, I never really thought I would have to use it so soon. But my dad was 50 when he had me. And when
Yeah.
I'm 25 years old, he suffered a catastrophic stroke and it was so debilitating. He survived for 12 years after that, and it was so hard but to watch, but he never lost his indomitable personality, and he always had a smile on his face.
Mhm.
But, part of this was very challenging because the second financial report I wrote was on long-term care insurance as a kid,
Ah,
and my dad knew he knew that he was gonna step on God's bus before my mom, and, there was gonna, like, who knows what he was really exposed to while working for the government, and he
right.
just was concerned, and so he had me at his knee researching out and, these life insurance policies, or sorry, long-term care insurance policies, and I took the information to our financial advisor with my mom, and we sat together and we talked about it, and our advisor, he said, "This is cute, Victoria. You have enough money, though. Your parents can self insure. So let's take the money and throw it into a real estate investment trust instead." So my parents went with him thinking that he was looking out for our best interest. And it wasn't until I became a financial advisor that I realized this dude wasn't even licensed to sell insurance products. And he was only concerned about his bottom line. And it's a very common, unfortunate belief in this industry and financial advising to view your client's money as your own.
Mhm.
That blows my mind. And so when he looked at my parents' situation, um, he saw the money that would have gone to that insurance policy as reducing his overall commissions. And my family was grossly unprepared for that day when I was 25 when my dad suffered that stroke. It was just supposed to be routine surgery, and he was never the same. And so not only did I have my dad's businesses to run after his stroke, I also had the operation surrounding the health costs. And my mom was, she was so broken by seeing her husband go through this that she couldn't get out of bed.
Wow.
And I mean, my dad knew that, my mom has other talents and money management is not one of them. So I was trained to step into his shoes. And thank God that he had prepared me. Um, it was still very hard, and thank goodness they had resources, but this transition was made so much more difficult because that advisor was only invested in their was only concerned about their investments. And a lot of people are not aware that a financial advisor generally isn't really concerned with personal finance, with budgeting and insurance products. What a financial advisor, that's actually a protected term, and it is essentially it means that you sell investments. So investments are just a very small part of the pie of your overall financial well-being. There's insurance products that go into it. There's budgeting. There's, how are you doing your mortgage? There's so many things that you need to be building out as you're doing an estate plan or any type of life transition plan that financial advisors are not really focused on. And thankfully, I think there's been some slight changes, but I've been doing this for 8, 9 years, and I have to say, getting good financial advice may not come from necessarily a financial advisor. They're very much so trained in investment management. So you have to be very mindful that when you're asking for help, you're asking the right person too.
Okay, I have to say a couple things. First of all, your dad, what an amazing man, what an amazing father. And I can't help but think how proud he would be that you're using what he taught you, and you're helping people and you saw something go not quite right. And now you're doing something about it. But I can't help but ask, it makes me nervous. So what do you do? Like, we don't have a financial advisor. We've
Yeah.
always done it on our own, but like we're not really, we kind of like stick it in the 401k. We got some stock. Um, I'm not really great about finances. Like, who do you go to? How do you find someone that you trust?
Well, you interview a lot of people and you find somebody that meets your goals and alignment. I think it's important to have someone that's trained not just investments, but they maybe have a certified financial planning designation. But more importantly, now this is kind of going into the weeds. If you are working with an independent broker, I've been at Mutual of Omaha and Morgan Stanley, and now I'm independent. And when I was at Mutual of Omaha and Morgan Stanley, I was locked into selling their products.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, what that meant is that my clients, they might have been better served by an independent agent that had access to the open marketplace and all of the bells and whistles.
Right.
Um, when I was at Morgan Stanley, they didn't have any long-term care insurance. They are an investment management company. So they had a vendor that would sell that product, but their incentive structure is not really set up to have the advisors do this holistic plan because their business model is very specifically centered on investment returns. So you need to know how, like, what your constraints, if you are working with a money manager, what they are. And oftentimes, y- people don't make, not to use a blanket statement, but there's a lot people could do on their own if they
Mhm.
just set some time up. And, I always encourage people to get on the same page with their spouse now than later. It's not even a divorce, right? But most
Yeah.
people are not aware. It's either your spouse is going to die, and you're going to be single again. Hopefully it's in a very long time, but it's either a divorce or a death, and it's the same transition except with a death, you don't have that other person to ask where the information is. And I have done some estate navigations where no, the benefactor, he didn't keep any, like, a paperwork, and so
Mhm.
you have to go back and reconstruct what all of the assets are that you guys own. And so having courageous conversations with your spouse, what do we actually, like, what do we own and what do we owe? And is
Mhm.
there anything important that, you need to tell me if you step on God's bus tomorrow? Do you have a password backup? All these little things that you kind of take for granted as a part of your everyday operations right now, they
Mhm.
are so much more complicated and challenging if you don't have that person around. So, taking some time to get on the same page with your spouse. So, the last thing, like, I think anybody wants to deal with if they're grieving their spouse is money,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But with estate navigations, you're on a timetable. And so you have to go through the reporting process. You have to file paperwork with the state. You have to file a tax return, generally within 6 months. And so, oftentimes, especially for women, we're grieving the loss of our relationship. And then the attorney generally comes in and is like, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And they don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah, you're speaking my language, and this is exactly what I wanted to talk about because I want to empower people. And I have friends that kind of don't care. They kind of don't want to know, but you know what? You probably need to.
you have to know.
Yes.
Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to have the most expensive estate navigation on the face of the planet because you're starting at complete scratch. And you're also going to be dealing with all of your emotions that are going alongside of
Mhm.
it. And it is going to just be incredibly overwhelming. So it's challenging, but if you don't take advantage of communicating with your spouse now, you will most certainly pay for it later.
Yeah. And, even as I'm thinking about it, women are smart cookies and they can have a say in finances and in your retirement. And so I feel like, it's interesting. My husband is just like, you take care of it. I don't want to look at it. And yet I can't see any of his information. It's just
Yeah.
always a big mess. Like what's in the 401k? How can I get this money out for this kid in college? It's always a mess. So we try to work together. I feel like I'm trying to kind of budget things and I have no idea where the hell it's coming from. I have to, it's really interesting. And but then I also think he doesn't know how to pay a bill. He doesn't have any of my passwords. He doesn't know. So even as I'm thinking of this for me and for some yeah, like
So I'm going to terrify everybody. Like, once the bank knows that your spouse is dead and their social security number isn't active, they freeze the account.
right.
And so you have to wait to get a death certificate, which sometimes it can take 30 days, 60 days if they're backed up to get that death certificate. And if that person died under suspicious circumstances, it could be even longer.
Okay, let me ask.
Mhm.
So if they die and you're joint on the account, you can still get in.
It depends on how it's set up, but generally, yes.
Okay. Okay,
But
that's good. Yeah.
but any asset that is held specifically in their name, there is going to be an operational process that you're going to have to go through in order to access that money or those assets.
Okay. Okay. So let's kind of help the like everyday woman like
Mhm.
me, because even though I'm, educated, it's just not been something that I put a lot into. So, or for like my good friend who's like, I don't even want to just tell me what I can spend. I'm fine. And so she's such a darling. I love that about her. But so let's say we're going to start looking into this more. And like I said, I have a little more information. So what I have started doing is I send my husband a report on, because I'm like, I need you with me on this. I don't want to, I want to know. So this is what we have. This is what we're spending. This is what's coming up. And then I'll just email that off to him. Hopefully he'll look at it. Right. So that's like my first step, or for those women to just get a look at what you're spending and how
Mhm.
much is coming in. And what's a little goofy, my husband's income fluctuates. I don't have like it's always different. Sometimes I'm like, no. I like this. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, I can that goes through. So now as I age, I'm starting to go, okay, I don't want it to be quite so sparse on those, months. So just kind of getting, and sometimes you're not really going to know, right? So getting some a little pack, put it away so that you're ready for the lower pay months. But so just go through, know what's coming and kind of have your budget, know what's going out, just like you would if you were getting divorced kind.
Really? I mean, okay, here's the thing. Money can do so many things for you. And really, you should be having your money have multiple jobs. So, what that means is okay, let's say you want to save money, but instead of just keeping it in account, have it be in a high yield savings account or something like that. Put your
Mhm.
money to work for you. And I think a lot of us have a ton of subscriptions.
Yes.
Oftentimes we forget to cancel things and that $50 a month subscription adds up to being, considerable amount of money each year. So if you're able to reallocate how you're using your money, you can actually start living a more aligned a life that's more authentic to yourself. So we grow up in America, so everything is about consumption and using materialism as a way to regulate our emotions. If you are aware of that, for me, when I was dealing with Voldemort, I had a closet full of black bags. And it was because I was so miserable with him that I was looking for positive dopamine sources, and that
Mhm.
came in the form of the mall. So I would go buy myself a black bag and it, made me happy for those 15 seconds, but then I put it
Mhm.
right next to an almost identical bag next to it. So
Yeah.
it wasn't until one day I walked in and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is like a mausoleum to all of my feelings, all of my repressed emotions. This is where they are, perfectly coordinated in all these bags." I see my baggage.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. So this is what I like too, Victoria, is you're so positive. With the things that you say, and there was something else and I can't remember, but you said money can do so many things for you. Let's start holding on to that belief instead of I'm so afraid. I don't want to spend it. I don't, So I like that. I like that positive mindset.
Well, and it really, goes down to our childhood trauma, right? This impacts your relationships and divorce, but also it impacts how you use money. And most of us have essentially there's 3 types of main childhood wounds: abandonment, validation, and, betrayal. And so how this shows up is how you use money. For me, I was using money as a way to validate, but also as a way to counteract the feelings of abandonment that I was having. And there's a lot of betrayal in there too. And so I uh, started using my money for everybody else but me.
Yes.
Stereotypical, like I had a very ratty bra and underwear that I needed to throw out, but I'm like, God forbid I spend $100 and get some new duds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's giving myself permission and while I was raised in a very privileged household, my mom was constantly telling me, it's my money, not yours. And so there was a few incidents in my childhood where I saved up and I bought this really beautiful bracelet, and my mom made me return it because she didn't like me, doing that in front of my cousin. So the narrative that I had in my mind was, I even though I can make money, I can't spend it on myself.
Mhm.
And so that has been a narrative I have had to go in and change where, yes, I can make money and I can also use it to take care of myself.
Right.
So confronting these hard beliefs, and then something I think a lot of us probably do and not know it, but when I was going through my separation with Voldemort, I had been giving and giving and giving, and there was nothing left to give. For me, there was nobody in my corner, and I needed to have some type of positive human interaction where someone else was serving me. And it wasn't until I realized I was going to Starbucks 4 freaking times a day that that was how I was meeting that need. The There was nobody to hand me a cup of coffee at home. If anything, he was gonna pour the hot coffee on me, and I had to go outside to find any type of positive interaction. And so instead of, like, taking a step back and realizing, "Okay, this is a bad relationship and I need to build a community," I was outsourcing that to Starbucks.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for those baristas, but I needed that caffeine, maybe not 4 different espresso drinks a day.
Yeah.
And I see this a lot in my clients as well. We give, 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 give to everybody else, and we just need a small token of validation and appreciation, and that generally comes in the Starbucks line.
And okay, so what I'm kind of hearing is if you can become aware of that and really look at what you're spending it on, maybe you can meet that need somewhere else.
In a more healthy way that's actually going to fulfill you. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. I feel like, okay, this is a great place to stop because it's interesting. I mean, I think I could talk to you for days and days and days because I would love to talk to you more about childhood trauma. So maybe we can schedule another one because I actually just took a course on core wounds. And so I feel like we might be leaving people hanging a little bit, but I'd like to talk about that more if we can schedule another podcast
I love
and talk about childhood trauma and how that is affecting how you're dealing with finances now.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, and we can go into, how to create a mindful spending practice, and
That's what I need. Okay, Victoria. I'm gonna try to have you back for that. But I can't believe how fast this has gone. I can't believe how much I've learned. And I just am so grateful. I just love getting to know you better. And I love learning from you. And I just feel like this is such a blessing in my life. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
I just love your energy, and I'm so grateful for the platform to share some of my hard-won experience, so hopefully listeners can snipe that learning curve and
Yeah.
avoid all the mistakes I made.
That's the plan. That's the plan here at Saddle Up Live. So thank you so much. You take good care.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Saddle Up Live. As we conclude this exhilarating journey together, don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts, and become a valued member of our vibrant community. Because, as always, every woman deserves to thrive, flourish, and live her best life. Until the next time, saddle up and keep conquering those trails.